Welcome back to Northwest City Politics in the Know with Juanita. We're very glad to welcome you back to our show again this week. We're glad there's people like you out there, people that are interested in the issues that are happening in our cities. Because it is important for good government to have residents that know what's going on, that interact back and forth with the city staff and with the city councils and the mayors. So we're glad that you're out there. If you haven't watched our show before, each week we'll have someone on from one of the 9 cities in Northwest Community Television's viewing areas to update us on what are the issues that are happening in that city and what kinds of things you might be concerned about. And then we always encourage you, take down the email, the phone numbers, the website of the city, so if you've got questions, you can get in contact with the people in your city and find out what's happening, and then let them know how you're feeling too. And tonight, we're very happy to have as a guest Mayor Mark Steffenson from Maple Grove.
Well, thank you.
We're glad to have you back with us again.
Glad to be here.
Got to get our updates every once in a while, right?
That's right.
So we're glad that you're with us. And since you've been on our show before, you know that I'm going to let you introduce yourself out to our wider audience. Tell them a little bit about yourself and your time in Maple Grove.
Sure, I'm Mark Steffenson. I'm the mayor of Maple Grove. I've been the mayor since June of 2001, and prior to that I was on the city council for about 4 or 5 years. I'm also an attorney located in Maple Grove with a firm called Henningsen and Snoxel. I've been with them for over 20 years. So, you know, my family, I have a daughter who's 14, and so we're in those high school years.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And my wife's also an attorney in the community and does a lot of health care benefit work. So we keep ourselves very busy, and the community does a great job of helping everybody. So, you know, it's an exciting time in Maple Grove as usual.
Yeah, this is our Northwest area is a pretty good area, I think.
It's a great community to live in.
It
You know, I
is.
grew up and went to Robbinsdale High School before it closed, and so my wife went to Park Center, so both of us grew up in sort of the northwest suburbs and have been here all our lives. So it's a great place. We obviously view it as a great place to live.
Definitely. And then I asked you to think a little bit, because being an election year, 8 of our 9 cities have elections this year, and that the filings are starting for the one with primaries now, and it will continue into August. But maybe you have a little advice for people that are just thinking about the process, or maybe that have moved a little bit along, and what advice can you give them?
So, you know, for our city, there's 2 city council spots that are open for election this fall. Councilmember Johnson and Councilmember Hanson, and so they're both up for re-election. And so, you know, I don't know if they're both going to run or not, but they'll have to announce that in the near future. But we don't have a primary, so we have sort of a general election free-for-all, you might call it. So if there's 10 people who file, 10 people are on the November ballot. We don't have a primary. So the one thing that certainly, if you're interested in running, you need to be aware of what the city issues are.
Oh, definitely.
You know, it's obviously helpful to be involved in city activities or community activities, so you know what's going on in the community. Because I think it's always tough for those people who are running for office if they're not actively involved in various community activities.
Oh, yes, definitely. It shows up in the interviews, and it shows up in the League of Women Voter Information.
Right, you don't have to be involved in city government or on commissions, but I think it's important you're involved in city organizations or you're involved in school activities, whether it's PTO or the various athletic organizations or arts councils or whatever it is that you like. It's important to have been involved in something before you try and run for office, so you have a background of what's going on in the community.
So this might be a learning time for people if they're just thinking about it.
Yeah, if they're thinking about it, they really got to investigate it. You know, it's a process that I think it really takes a lot of dedication and effort.
It does.
And so, you know, I think you have to make sure that you're really wanting to run for office, because it does take a lot of time and effort. Not only if you get elected, but more importantly, if you're running for office, it's a lot of effort and time between now and November to actually get elected.
All right, we're going to look first at some development that you've got going in Maple Grove, and there's a lot of different areas. But at the area of Hemlock and Elm Grove Boulevard?
Elm Creek Boulevard.
Elm Creek Boulevard. Want to make sure I got that right. That you've got a large plot of land. Can you kind of describe where it is with some of the things around it for people that aren't as familiar with Maple Grove?
Sure. The plot of land that's being developed is the northeast quadrant of Hemlock and Elm Creek Boulevard. So on the south side of Elm Creek right there is the Fountains. So that's where Costco is, REI, those type of stores. And to the west of Hemlock, we have the medical building, we have the Great River building with the windmill, and then you have the shops sort of south and west of that intersection. So that's sort of where it's located.
Okay. And how many acres is in this site?
I think it's around 30 acres.
That's what I thought. It must be a fairly good sized area.
It's a big site and has a lot of development that'll be happening. On it.
And part of the process is for each city, maybe you can describe it a little, before you get to the point of having a developer, which the city has approved, what are the steps that happen first?
Well, for instance, for this parcel, the parcel was sold by the landowner to the developer. They came in with a development project that we looked at. We actually rejected it the first time. Sort of sent them back and say, we need to improve on some things. And then they came back and we liked the improvements. And so it's a combination of sort of a very high density apartment units and then a lot of commercial retail development on the south half of the project.
Because the city has certain ideas that you want to have happen there, but you have to find the developer that wants to do the same kinds of things that the city would like to see done, right?
Right. I mean, we've spent a lot of time and effort as a city to develop sort of what we'll call our development plan for the city. And in particular, in Maple Grove, we spent an awful lot of time developing what was known as a special gravel mine area plan. And so that's a plan where we developed the concept of having a main street in Maple Grove, where we developed the idea of having this sort of large shopping retail area. And in combination with that, we now are going into more of the some housing and some continuation of the retail, but also, in the future, we're going to be looking for more office, more commercial, more industrial in that area of the gravel mine area. So as we transition from west to east, we want to see some of that start to happen.
Oh, right. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the size of apartments and the kinds of stores that might come in there?
Sure. On the north half of the project is where the apartments are going to be located. We've approved over 700 units for this area, which is a very high density. These are going to be generally very high-end apartment, luxury type apartment units. They're going to be large in size, and there's going to be a lot of amenities. There's a very large, what I'll call clubhouse. So the clubhouse is going to have a lot of different amenities that the people who are going to be living there are going to love. I mean, whether it's the traditional indoor-outdoor pools, the golf simulator, the banquet room facilities, separate rooms for different activities, sort of a lounge area to relax in. I mean, it's a very well thought out sort of set of amenities. There's going to be like what I'll call smaller, specialized sort of what I'll call almost like a dining room entertainment area, so that if you want to have your entire family over to your place, there's a place for you to entertain for 20 or 30 people instead of trying to figure out how they all fit into your apartment. So it's a really well thought out. It's actually going to be a gated community. So there will be a security guard, and there will be actually a gated entrance into the apartment complex.
That'd be kind of new for the area.
That'll be very new. We've never had anything like that before. And then on the south half of the parcel is where the commercial will take place. So on the south half, there are going to be 2 hotels. So that will bring a lot of new hotel rooms to our community. There'll be an office building. There will be a bank. There'll be a pharmacy. There'll be 2 or 3 restaurants and a couple other activities, retail activities in that area. So it'll be very intense. There'll be a lot of business traffic. And it's sort of what we want for that downtown area of Maple Grove. So it's going to be a project that's going to be a very costly project and a very nice project to add to our city.
And it takes time for that all to go together into a plan that starts moving forward to where people can see something happening.
Right. I mean, we've had a number of projects proposed for that site in the past, and we know that this current project is going to take 2, 3, 4 years to actually build out to completion.
Sure. So there'll be different phases along the way for each of the different parts of that project?
There will be. So there'll be a first phase for the apartment units, probably about 160 apartments out of the 700. And then I think that the 2 hotels will probably be built in phases. So you'll build one hotel first, then the second hotel. And I think that's the way it will sort of work for that whole development.
And what's the timeline then for the whole project?
So I think that they're actually going to start grading the site here in the next couple weeks.
Oh, so people will see things happening.
So people will see things happening. They'll be putting some of the footings already for this fall, and then start the development over the winter. So you'll see actual building taking place. I think that occupancy of the buildings will probably happen in the first quarter of 2018. So it's actually going to take a while for them to build everything.
And so now the next steps will all be the builder's part, and then the city will be overlooking it?
Yes.
Or overseeing what's happening?
Right, we'll be inspecting and make sure it meets city code, meets what we agreed upon, what they came to us and said, this is what we're going to do. I mean, this is something that cities have to make sure that, you know, you've given them permission to build in this fashion. We have to make sure that they follow through on what they promised they were going to do.
So, there's a lot of work up and coming for your community development.
Our building department is going to be very busy making sure that everything passes inspection.
And then that's the kind of the behind the scene things that happen on projects that people might not be aware of, but they're important.
They are very important to make sure that you meet code, that you do all the things the way you're supposed to do it, so there aren't problems in the future. I mean, we want to make sure that we comply with the code and follow the code, and sometimes I know the builders aren't very happy with us because we're saying you got to change something because this isn't quite right, but you know, that's what we're there for, to make sure that it's done right, so that whoever's living there, if they're living in the apartment units, that they have a great place to live.
Right. And then there's a development going in, another development, because we've got phase 1 done, move that over. There's another development going in at Bass Lake Road and Highway 101.
Right.
Maybe you can give us an update on what the city is considering for this location.
Okay, so this is actually the development on what I'll call the southeast corner of Bass Lake Road at 101. Maybe some people out there might remember that probably about 10 years ago, we had a similar project that came forward that was going to include a grocery store and some other retail elements. And then there's housing right to the south that's being built as well. This project now is very similar. It will bring in a new grocer. It's going to bring in Hy-Vee. So Hy-Vee is going to be located there, along with their traditional gas station facility, convenience store. And then there will also be some additional retail elements on that corner. I'm not sure exactly what yet, but you know, I'm sure that what it'll be is it'll be a coffee shop. It'll be a couple of fast food restaurants that are sort of the sandwich shop, a Subway, or a Which Wich, or a Liachin, or something like that will be there. And I'm not sure what else, but that'll be sort of what will be built on that corner. And then just to the south of there, there'll be some additional homes built as well.
So what stage is that project in?
That project was actually approved already by the city. And so I think we're just sort of waiting for the developer to finish up their development stage plans and come back, and we'll move forward with the project, and hopefully we'll see them start building soon.
And that area of Maple Grove then will have a grocery store closer by.
Which will be very nice. I've heard a lot of comments from the residents out in that direction about how happy they are with it, because right now it's actually a pretty good drive to get to a grocery store. So.
And then with all the traffic and everything that there's around nowadays,
it's nice
makes
to have
a difference.
It's nice to have that grocery store 5 minutes away instead of 15 minutes away.
And so this project, what kind of timeline are they looking for?
Not exactly sure. Hy-Vee hasn't committed to when they're actually going to start, but they've been approved, and I would hope that they would start this fall sometime, and then sort of work throughout the winter months to get the project completed.
So they've brought their proposal and the city has approved the proposal?
Yes, yes, and so it's ready to go, and they just need to decide when they're going to actually start the building.
And the city would have the same follow-up processes for this project as the other one?
Absolutely, make sure that they're following the code, and they need to stick to the code, and we try to make sure that that's what happens.
And then kind of a side benefit is that both of these projects bring in jobs, right?
Both of them will bring in not only construction jobs to build them, but obviously they'll bring in a lot of jobs in the future as well when those stores open up.
So that's one of the side benefits to the city's work in getting different businesses and things involved.
Sure. I mean, it's great for the people who live in our community or the neighboring communities to have a job that is fairly close to home.
Right. Now, in Maple Grove, in your main shopping area, now that shopping area was like the first of that style in Minnesota, right?
It was the first of that style in I would call the northern United States.
Okay.
So I know that when they were looking at developing that sort of open air mall, they talked about the open air mall they had developed in Phoenix and one that they had developed in Newport Beach, California, which were very popular and but this is the first one that they did in a climate or area of the country where we actually have real winter.
Right.
And so, that was sort of a risk, and it's worked out very well.
Very popular with
Very
people,
popular.
right? Yeah. And within that, just off of Elm Creek, I keep forgetting Boulevard or Parkway? Boulevard, Elm Creek Boulevard. Make that in my head. There's a Don Pablo restaurant, and you're considering some changes for that?
Right. The Don Pablo is closed, and so the consideration right now is an actual third additional hotel.
Oh,
So
okay.
another hotel developer is looking at that site to build a new 5-story hotel in that location.
So do you have different developers bringing you plans, or have you zoned around to one developer?
I think that right now, as I understand it, there's one main developer who's looking at that hotel concept on that site. They're a company that owns a lot of hotels in the metropolitan community.
How long was that restaurant in Maple Grove? Quite a while, right?
I bet you it's probably 20 years.
Yeah, because we'd have been there off and on. I think one of the benefits of your shopping area, though, is the number of restaurants that are spread throughout it.
We have a lot of restaurants. We have a lot of national chain restaurants, and we have a lot of local restaurants that are owned by local people that live here, and it isn't a national chain as well.
Right. Now, what kind of benefits does a hotel bring to Maple Grove?
Well, I think that it helps solidify the community as a place where, businesses want to locate because they can have the travel easy for their people. When people come to Minneapolis, St. Paul, particularly from the Northwest, it makes it very easy for them to stop here, to shop here, to dine here, to stay here, and they like that convenience. And so I think what we've seen is that there's a high demand for additional hotel rooms because the economy is doing a little bit better, and there's more people in the metropolitan area, and so there really is this need for these additional hotels in our community where 94, 694, and 494 all come together.
Yeah, having all the interstates make a difference, right?
It does, because it's convenient for the business traveler and it's convenient for the vacation traveler.
Now, where is that in the development process?
They're still talking with the owner of the Don Pablo's location, and so they haven't actually made an application yet. They've just talked to the city about the idea, and are we willing to look at that idea at that location?
It's a fairly long process from the start of an idea to where it gets approved by the city council, right?
It is, and it takes some time, and some of the projects take longer than others just because of their complexity or their change of what they want to do for the use of the site. So that's part of the problem there too.
So that one doesn't have any timeline yet because it's in the beginning stages.
There's no
right?
timeline yet on that, and we just know that there's something that will happen there hopefully in the near future.
So there is some redevelopment going on in Maple Grove. Usually we're talking development.
Usually we're talking about development, but this is redevelopment, and I think that, as a city, we're getting a little bit older, and so we're going to see more and more of this concept of redevelopment and what it all means. And I've always said that I think redevelopment's tougher than development.
Oh, right.
So that'll be part of our challenges in the years to come.
as the city keeps changing and growing, right?
Well, times change, people change what they want, and restaurants change because sort of those fads come and go as well. And so I think that as a city, you have to be aware of that.
Oh,
and
yes.
Try and work with that to make sure that you redevelop timely and make sure that your city stays vitalized.
Now, the Minnesota legislature has been talking about, and other people have been talking about for quite some time, about Metropolitan Council maybe needing some changes along the way. And I thought maybe I'll talk about this with a number of people, and then we'll gather it together into a show at some point where we hear from all kinds of different people. But maybe you can tell us about how the Metropolitan Council works with and affects the city of Maple Grove, because a lot of people out there might not, they've heard it, but they don't know what they do.
So the Metropolitan Council is a body that's appointed by the governor, and the governor has the right to appoint all the members to the committee and the council. So, when you have a change in governor, you have a change in the council.
Right.
And
everybody changes.
Everybody changes, and the whole concept changes. And one time they're marching this way, and the next time they're marching in a different direction. And so I think that for sometimes it's a little bit confusing as to what their goals or their objectives really are.
Right.
And I think that we as a city have to deal with them on planning and zoning issues. They have a right to approve our planning and zoning changes. Once we have a plan put in place, they can't come in and say you can't do this anymore. But we do have to get changes to our plan, and periodically we have to provide them with a comp plan update.
Oh, right.
And we're in the process of starting that now. But so there's certain things that they have a say over what we do and how we do it. But so it can be very influential in a community.
Right.
And in some communities it has more impact than others. I think that probably from that perspective it has more impact on developing communities than on communities that are already developed.
Right. So what do you see, first we'll talk about benefits. What benefits does Maple Grove derive from their interaction back and forth with the Met Council?
Well, I think that we are able to work on the ideas for the development and what maybe is best for the community. I think they have some good ideas and have expressed some good ideas from time to time on development or what they really would like to see and how we would react to that.
Right.
And so I think that provides good benefits, and obviously they're in charge of operating the sewer and that type of system. So we have interaction with them on that as well, and I know that they're looking at some water resource issues as well right now, and I think that we as a city of Maple Grove, we have spent a lot of money and time on our water resources, and so I think that we're one of the bigger communities as far as that goes with respect to we provide water for a number of our neighboring communities, and people don't really realize that we provide water to Osseo, we provide water to Corcoran, we provide water to Dayton, and so we've really over the years spent a lot of time and effort on our water system, and so I think that it all becomes part of a big overall system. It has a big impact on us.
Well, and it's, from what everybody says, and as you watch it, water is going to become an increasingly important issue.
Well, I think it is, and I think that we have to, as a city, that we are so intertwined with other communities out here providing them with water. I think it's important for us to have an active say in how the Met Council is thinking about changing or affecting where water comes from, what supply we use, and how much we use, and how we use it.
So then moving on to different areas, what kind of changes might the city of Maple Grove benefit from happening in the Metropolitan Council? Now, whether anything gets happened in this legislature, who knows? But the discussion has been ongoing and getting more.
Yeah, I think that there's been two principal concepts involved. One is to change the Met Council to still having appointment by the governor, but having staggered terms, so that when you have one governor leave, half of the positions would have 2 years left to run on their term, versus everyone is out and we have a complete change overnight. I think that there's some merit to that, because I think sometimes it's been difficult to deal with those changes. And I think sometimes their staff has had a hard time dealing with the changes in direction that a new governor brings to that position. And the other position that is out there is essentially one that's being promoted by some of the outlying counties, which is really, we want the body to be comprised of either all or half elected officials that are city or county officials that are elected to office that would then be put in position to be on the Met Council, along with, I believe the plan is still half appointed by the governor.
Okay. So there's a lot of vigorous discussion happening about that now.
There is, and I think that there's reasons for it, because I think there's been some frustration by a lot of communities over how the Met Council has handled certain things, and I think that that's showing up in some of these these ideas on how to change it.
So what do you think would work best for Maple Grove?
Well, I think it's hard to say. I think it would be good to see some changes. I'm not sure what the elected official appointment model really is. It seems to me that, from what I've heard, it's been hard to figure out. So take for instance, I think in our area, our Met Council representative, I think, represents probably a half a dozen or more communities. So if you're an elected official, who from those communities gets to be the council member?
Gets to make the decisions.
Well, who gets to make the decisions? And how does that work? I don't know that we've figured that out. So I think there's a lot for them to figure out on that plan before that goes forward. But I do think that it makes some good ideas that they can make changes now to have staggered terms, just because I think it would help with the effectiveness of the council and the transition from one governor to the next.
Yeah, and that's important for the growth in our area.
Well, it is, and I think it's important. I've been around long enough now to see fundamental shifts in policy by them, and sometimes they go in directly opposite directions overnight. And so I think that at times has been difficult for some of the developing communities to deal with, because, a week ago you were saying,
going this way.
You were saying a week ago we'd absolutely never do this, and now they're saying, why haven't you done this before?
But it can lead to some ruffled feathers,
I think ruffled feathers and just incredible frustrations with dealing with the organization where you're not sure where they're coming from next.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and your thoughts and your experiences with us. And we'll encourage those of you out there to be sure to tune in next week for part 2 on issues that are happening in Maple Grove. And remember to take the time, when an issue is important to you, take the time to find out what's happening through your city staff. Let your mayors and city council people know what your concerns are, but also when something good happens, let them know that too. And we'll look for you to join us again next week. Bye.